Hi, listener, and may the peace of Christ be with you. My name is Peter, and this is I Am. I Am is a Catholic podcast based in the Episcopal Conference of Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands, where we share on the coming week's gospel every week. This week's gospel will be read by Father Ambrose Pereira.
Now on the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no wine left." Jesus replied, "Woman, why are you saying this to me? My time has not yet come." His mother told the servants, "Whatever he tells you, do it." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for Jewish ceremonial washing, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus told the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them up to the very top. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the head steward." And they did. When the head steward tasted the water that had been turned to wine, not knowing where it came from, he called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the cheaper wine when the guests are drunk. You have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this as his first miraculous sign in Cana of Galilee. In this way, he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him.
Thank you very much, Father Ambrose, for that reading. Beautifully read. It is a really beautiful gospel that we have today, this Sunday, and it is very fitting for our very first episode of this podcast. Now, before we get into the sharing of the gospel, I'd like to officially welcome you all and thank you for joining me on this new Catholic podcast for Catholics in Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands. The idea for this podcast came about when I started watching podcasts by Catholics from other parts of the world. Now, after seeing all these podcasts, I thought, why not start one for Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands in the context of Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands. Now, I am from Papua New Guinea, so that means most of my direction of this podcast will be coming from the fact that I am Papua New Guinea, so it may mostly be in the context of Papua New Guinea, but nevertheless it is for all listeners in the Episcopal Conference of Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, and also important to note for any Catholic in the world. Now, I will try to do my best to keep within the ambits of the Catechism of the Catholic Church so that it limits any prejudice that I may have as speaking in the Papua New Guinean context. But at the end of the day, the target audience is for Papua New Guineans and Solomon Islanders. So, I'm very excited. I welcome you all to our very first episode, and I'd just like to say thank you to Mama Mary. Now, in case you're all wondering where I am, I'm sitting in my yard and I'm sitting next to my beloved mother. So it's very fitting for me to be opening the podcast on this gospel where Jesus is with his mother and I'm with my beloved mother. Okay, so let's get into it, guys. Our gospel for this week is, of course, the wedding at Cana. That's John chapter 2, verse 1 to 11. Now this is where Jesus performs his very first miracle. And it was through this miracle that he was first revealed to his disciples. At the end of the gospel, we hear that he revealed himself to his disciples through this miracle, and they started to believe in him. And it is important to note that this first miracle happened because of Mother Mary. I'd like you all to take a moment to appreciate that. If Mother Mary had not opened her mouth to ask Jesus, we would not have this miracle. Now, I'll get into the importance of this miracle and the importance of the role of Mother Mary in this miracle. The first point as to the importance of Mother Mary and her role in this miracle is that this miracle shows the respect that Jesus had for Mother Mary and the value of Mother Mary in the life of Jesus. I know perhaps the majority of us know what I mean by stating this, because we look at the dialogue between Jesus and Mother Mary. The setting is this: they're at a wedding. Mother Mary comes to Jesus and tells Jesus, and for all of you that might not be aware, this wedding was actually a wedding of a cousin of Jesus. So Mother Mary and Jesus were there as relatives of the bride and groom. And Mother Mary comes to Jesus and tells Jesus privately, the wine is all gone. And Jesus asks Mother Mary, why are you telling me this, woman? It is not my time yet. And then Mother Mary turns around and then tells the people there, she tells them, listen to whatever he tells you to do. As events play on, Jesus actually does perform the miracle. So you see what happens is that Mother Mary tells Jesus, and then Jesus tells her, rebuts and tells her it's not his time yet to be revealed, to be doing any form of miraculous work. But then Mother Mary does not need to say anything else. She goes on to just tell the assistants or the servants that were there that listen to whatever he tells you to do. And then Mother Mary, I'm assuming she steps aside. And then Jesus is standing there and Jesus just performs the miracle. So that tells us that Jesus loved Mother Mary so much, and that he was going to do, whether or not, even though he told Mother Mary, I'm assuming the tone must have been, no, Mom, what are you doing? Why are you telling me to do this? I can't do this. This is not part of God's plan. It's not part of the eternal plan. I can't be doing this right now. But then Mother Mary just turns on and tells the servants, listen to whatever he tells you to do. And then I'm imagining our Lord Jesus just slapping his forehead, face in palm, and just saying, I have to do this because this is my mother asking me. So I'm imagining that's the scene there. This gospel shows us the respect that Jesus had for Mother Mary and the value of Mother Mary in the life of Jesus. And for us, importantly, I believe it tells us, not just sons, but sons and daughters, on how we should treat our mothers. Because obviously, if God himself, in the form of his Son, Jesus Christ, would obey his mother on such a request that's demanding and confronting in the spur of the moment, and for him to have obeyed his mother is itself a great teaching of virtue. I believe it tells us and shows us the virtue of, it gives us the virtue, or a virtue, that children must obey their parents. Again, I repeat, you see this obedience through the fact that Jesus broke the eternal plan for the sake of Mother Mary's request. And this shows us the measure of Jesus' love for Mother Mary. And more so, it reveals to us the measure of the love of God for mankind, the measure of the love of Jesus Christ for us. For Jesus Christ, God himself, to abandon the eternal plan for the sake of us human beings, for the sake of his mother. That tells us that God is willing to change things for us, to change plans for us. And it shows to us that this is an ongoing interactive love story, this life that we live. It's an ongoing interactive love story between us and God, where God is willing to change plans for us. My favorite non-Catholic preacher, the late Dr. Ravi Zacharias, had stated in one of his sermons that if we are so bent on going our own way or following our own will, God will step aside and second our motion. And meaning that's how much God loves us. He'll step aside and second our motion for whatever it is that we're so yearning and praying and asking God for. And he uses the example of how the Israelites were complaining to the prophet Samuel to tell God that they wanted a king, even though God didn't want to give them a king, but he gave them King Saul in the end. So again, the way that Jesus abandons the eternal plan for the sake of Mother Mary's request shows us the depth of love that God has for each and every single one of us. Now, the other point that shows how this first miracle happened because of Mother Mary and the importance of the role of Mother Mary in this first miracle is also you'll see in the response of Mother Mary to Jesus. Mother Mary's response to Jesus revealed that Mother Mary knew Jesus would obey, even though it was not part of the eternal plan. And that's something I believe is important for us to remember about this gospel. Mother Mary's response to Jesus revealed that she knew Jesus would obey him, even though it was not part of the eternal plan. What do I mean by this? Well, after when Jesus responds to Mother Mary and tells her, "Woman, it is not my time yet. I cannot be performing this miracle yet. That's not part of the eternal plan. This is not when I will come out yet." But then what does Mother Mary do? She turns around and just tells the servants to do whatever he tells you to do. Meaning, Mother Mary knew Jesus would obey her request. And I believe simply, and I'm sure most of you will agree with me, is that because Mother Mary is the mother of Jesus Christ, and she raised him, and they both shared the loving relationship that a mother and child would share. And obviously she knows the temperament of Christ growing up. She raised Jesus, she's his mother, she knows the type of temperament that Jesus has. So definitely Mother Mary knew that Jesus had an obedient temperament, that Jesus was very obedient towards her. So in the way that Mother Mary simply turned and told the servants, do whatever he tells you to do, tells us that Mother Mary already knew that Jesus would obey her request. So Mother Mary knew that Jesus loved her dearly. And this also tells us in the way Mother Mary approaches Jesus and asks Jesus to perform this or to assist in this instance where there was no wine left. This reveals to us a very beautiful thing. I say it's really beautiful because it is really beautiful. It reveals to us that Mother Mary knew about Jesus' powers. That's important to know. Mother Mary knew that Jesus had the power to do something about this issue. She went and asked Jesus, "Can you do something about this?" So you can only imagine if Mother Mary knew that Jesus could perform this miracle, you can only imagine what happens behind closed doors at their home in the privacy of the family between Saint Joseph, the beloved foster father of Jesus, and Mother Mary and Jesus when they're by themselves. You can imagine what type of home it must have been. If they were running short of flour, I'm imagining in the jar of flour, it might every day just be simply renewed and filled. If they ran out of oil, it must have been simply renewed or filled. Of course, I'm just imagining here, but I'm sure Jesus would never have misused his powers and become lazy in doing so. But this dialogue between Jesus and Mother Mary, Mother Mary approaching Jesus and telling Jesus, "Son, we have no wine left." And then Jesus responding to Mother Mary and said, "Mother, what are you doing? You can't tell me to do this. It's not part of the plan. My time is not come yet." That's Jesus telling Mother Mary, "My time is not come yet to be revealed to the public. What are you doing? It's not yet ready." That tells us beautifully how Jesus already had possessed these powers, but it was not his time yet to begin his mission, and Mother Mary knew this. So this brings to light a whole new perspective on the relationship between Mother Mary and Jesus. And I believe a lot of people, a lot of Christians, and even a lot of Catholics perhaps do not know this fact about the relationship between Mother Mary and Jesus. This gospel and all the previous gospel readings on the birth of Jesus, his incarnation, the message from Archangel Gabriel to Mother Mary, all the way up to the death of Jesus, Mother Mary knew at every single moment, or in every single moment, who Jesus was and what he could do. So again, this gospel reveals to us the importance of our beautiful and loving Mother Mary in the life of Jesus. And it reminds us of how we as children must obey our parents. It is a great virtue. I believe it is a great virtue in the eyes of God, because if Jesus was to have performed his first miracle based on the obedience or the virtue of obedience to his mother, his parents, in contrast to the eternal plan that was laid out for him, that tells us that the virtue of obedience to our parents and respect for our parents must be dear in our hearts and held dear in our hearts. Now, going off now the topic of the importance of the role of Mother Mary in this first miracle, I'd like to also just pick out two other interesting points from this gospel reading for us to dwell on and appreciate. Now, the first one is the 6 stone water jars that were present when Jesus complied with Mother Mary's request. He told the servants to bring together 6 stone water jars that were filled with water. And what Jesus does is he tells them, take out some of the water from one of those stone jars and take it to the guests. And they do so. And once the water gets to the guests at the table, it turns into wine. And as we read on further on in the gospel, it is the best wine the guests have had at that wedding, as opposed to the other wines that they had earlier on. Now, I bring our attention to the 6 stone water jars. I'd like to pose or posit this idea to us all to reflect on, that the 6 stone water jars are somewhat a symbolism to show us how Christ can make great and holy things come from what we perceive as being worthless or useless or as ordinary things. You know, the issue there was that wine had run out. Everybody was looking for wine. And I'm sure nobody was paying attention or even bothered to consider those 6 stone water jars that were standing there. But Jesus turns everybody's direction towards those 6 stone water jars. And from those 6 stone water jars, the miracles come forth. So from what was just 6 stone water jars just standing on the side for if people wanted to wash their hands or their feet, as the custom was in the culture there, or if it was just for drinking, those 6 insignificant stone water jars that were standing there were used to bring us the first miracle of Christ ever performed. It's just, to me, that is a beautiful symbolism of what Jesus can do for each and every single one of us. So for all of us who may have felt worthless or useless or as being just, there's nothing special about me, I'm just ordinary or perhaps less than ordinary, even if we're feeling that we're not like everybody else around us, we must always remember that Jesus can turn us or use us, make us become instruments of great holiness, great wonders. And of course, this example is real all throughout the Bible, in the Old Testament and the New Testament as well. You will see how Jesus uses the lives of people to make it far greater than they had ever imagined. We see Moses, who was a stutterer, who openly told God that he was not fit to do what God was asking of him, but he turned out to be the great prophet that we know. We see King David, who was just a young boy shepherding the sheep, comes from the fields where he was shepherding into the battle zone, right into in the center, the thick of the battle, right there where the confrontation of Goliath and the Israelites was, and he conquers Goliath. We see St. Paul, who was initially known as Saul of Tarsus, and then later St. Paul. We see how he was initially an executioner of Christians, but then became the great St. Paul that we know. We see St. Augustine, one of the doctors of the church, or one of the fathers of the church. We see how he was first a fornicator and adulterer, and then later becomes the great St. Augustine that we know, one of the doctors and fathers of the Catholic Church. So Jesus can make great and wondrous and holy things come out of anything, to any of us. The second little detail from the gospel that I'd like for us all to take away and I posit to us all to ponder on is a simple one, and it's on the sacredness of the sacrament of marriage. If you didn't know how special the sacrament of marriage is, well, always remember that the first miracle that Jesus performed was at a wedding party. Now imagine that. Imagine being the bride and groom and having God attend your wedding. Now at that time, the bride and groom didn't know that Jesus was the Son of God or was God himself. But how special was it to have God attend your wedding, be at your wedding, and then provide wine for your wedding? Now that is just something else. So that's a little side note I'd like for us to note on the importance of the sacrament of marriage. You'll hear there's so many resources in the Catholic Church on the importance of the family unit and how it correlates with the Holy Trinity and how God exists and dwells within the family unit. Now, it is not surprising that his first miracle was performed in flesh and very present at the wedding, providing wine for the wedding celebration. And that's really a blessing, and I believe it's somewhat of a statement made by Jesus that at a wedding, when two become one, Jesus and God are there present with them and among them. So that's something, another side note that I just like to make concerning this gospel for us to just consider and reflect on further. Now, to conclude, I attended Mass this morning, and Father Martin Ween, we all know Father Martin, he hosts Radio Maria. His sermon this morning pointed out another simple point. He stated how Jesus listened to his mother and obeyed his mother, and he stressed on the importance of us as Christians, as Catholics, as the body of the Catholic Church, to be listening people. We should be listening to the voice of Mother Mary, the voice of Jesus, the voice of God. And Father Martin went on to stress that we should be listening and we should be doing more instead of talking. I just wanted to include that into my sharing for us all to know that, because I believe that is a really important point that Father Martin made. We should all be listening, because that's how we all come to know or come to discern our vocations. It's by listening. Stillness and silence. We should be taking moments of stillness and silence to reflect and listen to what God is telling us and calling us to do. Again, it is my privilege to have brought you this very first episode of I Am. As we go on, we will be bringing to you interesting content on the Christian faith, more particularly the Catholic faith, and we hope that the content that we bring to you helps to deepen your faith. That is the end result of this podcast. So again, I thank you all so much for listening and for joining me for this first episode of I Am. We'll see you next Sunday. So thank you once again, and may the peace and the love of Christ be with you all and remain with you all. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed that sharing on this week's gospel. Now if you have some further sharing you'd like to add or some comments you'd like to make, please do not hesitate to drop them in the comments below. And if you have a topic that you'd like us to present on specifically, please ask us in the comments.